There's a few things about Chanukah that I think we didn't talk about, not on the first level, not on the second level.
Oh, there's one here. Thank you. You're welcome.
Bring it from Argentina. Okay.
Yeah.
We know that the menorah that we light on Chanukah is to remember the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. So that means that when we light the menorah on Chanukah, it's not the same, but it must be similar to the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash in one way or another. So let's just talk a little bit about the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. What was that all about? So the Haftorah, every Shabbos when we read the Parsha, we also read Haftorah, which means we read something from the books of the prophets. And Chanukah, we read a Haftorah that's not related to the Parsha, but related to Chanukah. In fact, every holiday we do that. When it comes to the Haftorah, instead of reading a Haftorah normally that's similar to the Parsha, we read a Haftorah that's similar to the holiday Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, or whatever it is. So what we read there's this pair Shabbos. Sometimes there's two Shabbos in Chanukah. Then there's another Haftorah, but this Shabbos we read something from the book of Zechariah, and he had a prophecy. The prophetic vision was a vision of a menorah, and the menorah had 7 branches, like in the Beis Hamikdash. But over there, it explains that the 7 branches represent the Jewish people. What's the connection? So first of all, every Yid has a neshama, and the pasuk says, "Ner Hashem nishmas Adam." The candle of man is the soul of God, which means that our neshama is like Hashem's candle, but clearly a candle and neshama are compared to each other. This is the reason why, when God forbid a person passes away, that the custom is to light a candle, because that represents the neshama. It's also the reason why at a chuppah, the people that lead the chassan and the kala also hold candles in their hands. The reason is because at every chuppah, the souls of grandparents or great-grandparents come. I think I mentioned in another class, it was Yudal Kislev, that at every wedding, no matter who the person is, there are 3 generations of ancestors that passed away that come to the chuppah to give a blessing to the chassan and the kala. By certain tzaddikim, there are more ancestors that come, but for every person, it's 3 ancestors. And these 3 ancestors are coming, they're neshamas, souls. So we have the candle in our hand because that's how the soul could connect to this place through the candle. And why a candle? So there's actually an interesting explanation in Tanya. It's in chapter 19 in Tanya. The Alter Rebbe goes into this at length. The Alter Rebbe explains that we see something with the fire very different than other things, different than water, different than air, and different than earth. The fire is not still. When you light a candle, the fire is moving back and forth. And The reason for that is because this is the way the Alter Rebbe explained it according to Kabbalah. I'm not talking about the scientific reason, I'm talking about the Kabbalah reason. Is that the neshama has a constant desire and a constant drive. Wait a second. We'll talk about a candle now. Soon get to the neshama. That the fire is constantly, it wants to connect to its source. And the source of the fire is, it says in one of the places that is somewhere near the moon, and therefore the fire always is drawn upward. But because there's a wick, it holds it down. The wick or a piece of wood or paper, whatever it is that feeds the fire, it holds it down. Otherwise, the fire would extinguish. What does it mean it would extinguish? That this fire would go back to the source, which is the source of all fire energy in the world. So the Alter Rebbe says that's the same with the neshama, that the neshama has a desire to connect to its source, which is Hashem. And that fire is so strong and so not limited that if not for the fact that the body holds it down, the neshama would leave the body and just become included in Hashem. But the body is like a wick, and that holds the neshama down. And that's where the shaking comes from. In fact, it says in the Zohar that that's the reason why, I think it says in the Zohar, why we see Yidden have a nature that when they're learning with davening, they're shaking back and forth. Because Yid is like a candle, and just like the candle shakes back and forth,
It's trying to go up.
what? It's trying to go up, and then we have to hold it down. It's called the Ratzui V'shuv. It goes up and brought it down. It goes up and brought it down. Once had a student, I think if I remember correctly, from all the years, her parents gave her such a hard time, like I don't think anyone else did. But one day they told her they want to come to the school to listen to classes. She was in seventh heaven. They're gonna come to classes, and that's it. They're gonna hear what the teachers have to say, and they're gonna change their whole attitude. Okay. And they weren't ordinary people. The father was a doctor. The mother was, I think, also something professional woman, intelligent people. They sat down in all the classes very quietly, just listening. After the school was over, they said, "You better get out of here as quick as you can. This is a place where they're just brainwashing you." And she's like so shocked. So why are you saying that? I noticed every teacher when they're teaching, they're moving back and forth like this. And that's one of the techniques in brainwashing somebody. But the Zohar says that the reason why we move back and forth is because the neshama is like a fire and it's constantly moving back and forth. And it's not so technical. What it really means is that the neshama has two very strong feelings at the same time. One feeling is the neshama wants to be connected to its source, which is Hashem. On the other hand, the neshama knows that Hashem wants it to be down here in the physical body and live and bring Torah mitzvahs in the physical world. So therefore, the neshama is going back and forth because both are very powerful feelings, but between both feelings, the neshama finds the balance. It's here in this world. And that's why the neshama is compared to a candle. Why 7 candles? Because the 7 candles represent the Jewish nation. But where does the number 7 come from? So one of the explanations are that the Jewish nation is we're all branches of 7 people: Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. And because we're branches of 7 people, that means that in essence we come from this number 7, and we're divided into 7 categories. By the way, this is also connected to another thing, which is in this week's Parsha. How many people did Yaakov, I don't know if you learned it yet, but how many people did Yaakov, when he came to Egypt with his family, how many people all together came to Egypt? So it says, what? 70. In this week's Parsha, it says he came all together, there were 70 people. And according to Chassidus, 70 is the same as the number 7. But because each number and each attribute includes in it all the others, there are the 10 attributes. Everything's made up of 10 attributes. So therefore, Having 7, if you go into the more details, it's 7D. But what does it mean? It means like this, that every Yid is there to serve Hashem, but we all serve Hashem in different ways. And even though every single person is an individual, and every single person has a different kind of, like I say in English, something else that makes him tick, that gets him excited, that gives him a drive. But generally speaking, it's connected to the 7 attributes, which means there's certain people that are more chesed people, certain people are more gevura people, certain people are more teferis people. So everyone is doing the same thing. All keep the same Shabbos, all the men put on the same tefillin, and all the people eat the same matzah. We all hear the same shofar. But we're talking about the energy internally that drives me to do it. Everybody is different. For example, so one person does it mainly, like it says about Avraham Avinu, the main feeling and the main emotion that motivated him more than anything else was love for Hashem. He also had fear and awe of Hashem, but the main thing was his love. And that's why when Hashem speaks about Avram, he says, Avram Oyavi, Avram, the one that loves me, because that was his primary character trait. But Yitzchak, it says, Pachad Yitzchak, I'm the God that Yitzchak fears. Yitzchak certainly loved Hashem, but it means he focused more on how Hashem is infinite and how awesome he is and how he felt awe in the presence of Hashem. And that's what motivated him to do everything that he did. So that means that every person has something different that motivates them, and all those differences will fall into 7 categories. In Chassidus and Kabbalah, those 7 categories are Chesed, Gur, Teferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus. So therefore, the 7 candles represent all the Jews, but one candle represents all the Jews that are connected to Chesed. The other candle represents all the Jews that are connected to Gevura, and so on and so forth. So, in the Beis Hamikdash, when they lit the menorah, in general, I just want to say as an introduction, in general, one of the big differences between the way we understand mitzvahs from a Hasidic perspective or the way we understand mitzvahs without the Hasidic perspective. Generally speaking, without the Hasidic perspective, we understand mitzvahs as symbols. We eat matzah as a symbol to remind us that the Jews went out of Egypt and they ate these matzahs because there wasn't enough time for the dough to rise. So it's something which reminds us of what happened when they went out of Egypt. Or the lulav and the esrog are a symbol. Blowing the shofar is a symbol of, it's as if to say it's time to wake up, something like that. So what does Chassidus say that is different? Chassidus explain that these are not symbols. They are symbols, by the way. They are symbols. That's also true. But there's more than a symbol. Each article, each object that we do a mitzvah with draws down, makes something happen. Something is happening as a result of it. So just like a switch on the wall, when I turn it on, I just move it up, it makes something happen. The light goes on. There's certain switches that makes a machine goes on. There's a certain switch that'll make an airplane take off. So basically, every mitzvah is a very powerful process that activates godly spiritual light in the spiritual realm and draws that down over here. So the same as the Beis Hamikdash. It wasn't just that there was a menorah standing there, had 7 candles, and represented the 7 Jewish categories, the 7 categories amongst Jews. But it means that when Aaron HaKohen lit the first candle, which represents Chesed, it had an actual spiritual effect on all the Jews in the entire world that are connected mainly to Chesed, that this lit up their neshama, this lit up their soul. So a Jew could be in China, and he's davening, and he feels a inspiration and a fire in his davening, and it's a result of the fact that this morning, or rather this late in the afternoon, Aaron lit the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. And another Jew who is more Gevura, his neshama gets lit up because he lit the second candle. And the other person that's the Ferris, his neshama lit up because he lit the third candle. So basically, all the Jews in the world, their neshamas are ignited by the fact that Aaron lit the menorah. So try to imagine, just like there's a switch, piece of plastic, I just turned it on, and the light goes on in this room. Is it possible to turn on a piece of plastic and the light goes on in the whole building? Sure. Is it possible to turn on a switch and the light goes on in the whole neighborhood? Sure. And it can go bigger and bigger. So imagine this is a big switch that has main power, and you light the menorah, and all the Yidden in the world are lit up, their neshamas are ignited, and that's one of the reasons why we say that when the Beis Hamikdash was standing, people were at a much higher level of serving Hashem. Besides what happened through the sacrifices, what happened through the incense, and many other things, but this is what happened with the menorah every single day. The menorah corresponds to the neshama, and lighting the menorah meant that when Aaron was here, it had this wireless connection to the soul of every Jew around the world, and it lit up their personal neshama. So, what happens when we light the menorah? Chanukah menorah. So really the same thing happens. But the thing is, it happens on a much smaller scale. When Aaron lit the menorah, that affected the whole world. That affected tens and hundreds of thousands of Jews wherever they lived around the world. When we light the menorah, it mainly has an effect on me and my home, which means everyone is living in my house. Their neshama becomes lit up. Again, it doesn't mean that I'm standing in the room and suddenly I feel, oh, I'm flying. These things, we have to be more sensitive, but subconsciously, something happens inside that gives me new energy to be able to serve Hashem properly. And every candle represents a different one of the 7 attributes. And I would imagine that this also include anyone who benefits from my menorah, which means if I have a menorah in a place that other people see it, whether it's in my house and people come and they see it, because it's people that are hearing the blessing of the menorah from me, or it's in people that have it in the window and others walk by the window and they see it, because that's the purpose why it's in the window. That means that they will also be affected by the lights of the menorah. So again, it's not just symbolic, but it has an influence. And in that, if you understand a little bit deeper now, why the Rebbe requested that we should light the menorah publicly all over the world, I'm sure there's many reasons behind it. But one of them is when you light a menorah in a public place, there are thousands of people who see it. And in fact, today is covered by the news or by the TV, and basically millions of people are seeing it, and we have no idea what kind of effect it can have on a person. In fact, there are many people that tell the story how the menorah, when they saw the menorah, that sort of got them excited, and that was their first step that they took, going closer to Yiddishkeit. It doesn't mean everybody's going to react that way. I remember once when I was doing Miftzayim, I went into the store, and I said to this person, "You're Jewish?" "Yes." "I have a menorah. We'd like to take a menorah for Chanukah." "No, I gave already. I said, "I'm not asking you for money. I'm giving you a menorah to light." I know. I gave already. It's okay." He just couldn't get it. He's a rabbi with a beard. I'm sure he came to collect money. What else is he coming for? He's coming to give me something that he couldn't believe that could be true. But then there are, so not every single person you walk over and you say, "Here's a menorah," they go, "Man, the Shabbat just flying." Yeah, it doesn't always work like that. But generally speaking, even if you don't see it, seeds are planted. It has a spiritual effect on a person. In fact, it could be that the person who lit the menorah, and later, maybe a month or 2 months or 6 months later, goes to a class or hears something or sees something, and that affects him. It's a result of the menorah that he saw or that was lit. So what's the 8th candle? It's supposed to be only 7. What's number 8? And in the Beis Hamikdash, it was only 7. So the answer is that the 7 candles represent the 7 attributes of the neshama, and the number 8 in Chassidus and Kabbalah always represent the infinite, which means something which is higher and deeper than the finite realm. Which means, in terms of a person's neshama, that the number 8 is a part of the neshama that's not limited. It's the essence of the neshama that comes out, and that's mainly through the 8th candle, which will be tonight. In fact, tonight, as we light the 8th candle, you'll hear the words people saying today is Zois Chanukah. Anyone know why it's called Zois Chanukah? No. Okay, I'll soon get there. Let me try to explain this first, and then on number 8. What happened on Chanukah and what brought about the Geula, brought about the redemption, the big miracles, was mainly in the merit of the fact that Yehuda Maccabee and Matisyahu and the whole family, they all had Mesiras Nefesh. They were ready to give up their lives to make things turn around. Because Rashi explains in Chumash that altogether there were 12 people that were fighting the Greek-Syrian army. 12 people. Doesn't make any sense. Imagine 12 people fighting a huge army of tens of thousands of people. So it was a miracle. But in what merit did they have this miracle? What's a miracle? It's above nature, above something which is not limited. Same thing, because it came from them, from a place of Mesiras Nefesh. It came, they were so determined to not let Chas v'Shalom evil take over and the Beis Hamikdash be destroyed and the Jewish people lose their connection to Hashem, that they decided they're going to fight this with every fiber of their being, to the point that there's nothing in the world that's going to stop them. That kind of feeling, that kind of drive, that kind of determination comes from the essence of the neshama. It reminds me of the words of the previous Rebbe. Many of you probably know that when the previous Rebbe was in Russia, it was a similar time like Chanukah, that the government, the communist government, didn't allow Jews to have yeshivas, to learn Torah, to teach children. And the previous Rebbe organized underground, sort of a whole network underground of classes for children, kashrus, mikveh, everything that was needed to observe Torah mitzvahs and couldn't be done in the open. It was done underground. And then you needed people to run it. So he had his chassidim all over the country running different kind of organizations underground. And they were ready to do it and take the risk. Before all this happened, what happened was that the previous Rebbe called in 9 chassidim. To this day, we don't know who the 9 chassidim were. And he said to them, I want to make a covenant with you, and literally like a shvua, like a take an oath, that you're going to fight to strengthen Yiddishkeit here in Russia. And he used the term ad tipas dam achrona, which means till the last drop of blood. And they said, you are 9 and I'm the 10th. So the Rebbe was the 10th, and together they had a minyan. It's almost certain that Rabbi Jacobson, the famous Rabbi Jacobson, the speaker, Rabbi Simon Jacobson, Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, actually Mrs. Jacobson, who teaches in the school, that their grandfather, meaning her husband's father, he was one of the 10 people. And a few others, because this wasn't done for the purpose of fame or anything else. We don't know what happened to all of them. We don't know who they were even. It was just between them and Hashem. Nobody knew. But it was, we're going forward to the last drop of blood. Such a feeling and such a readiness to go forward to the last drop of blood can only come from one place. It can't come from a logical understanding. It's very important, because logic will never go that far. Logic is limited. And logic will always come to the conclusion like, wait, slow down, you can't do this, you can't do that, and you have to be careful with this, you have to be careful with that. But when there's something that comes out that's above logic, nothing is stopping me. So that's the Chashmonaim, and that's number 8. And therefore, because of that reason, they brought this out that the 8th level, the highest level of the neshama was revealed. And that happens every Chanukah, but mainly on the 8th day of Chanukah. So why in the Beis Hamikdash were there 7, and why in Chanukah is there 8? Because in the Beis Hamikdash represents times which is not Golus. In normal times, you don't need that number 8 to come out. You don't need the deepest level of the neshama, which is the yechida, the essence of the neshama, to come out. You can serve Hashem in an ordinary way, but when there's a very big darkness, and that's blocking, and that's threatening our very existence, of the very existence of Torah and Yiddishkeit, the only way to fight that is bringing out the depth of the neshama, and that's the 8th level, and that's why we have 8 candles, and that's what Chanukah is all about. And these are the same thing you hear in other classes, that there's a part of the neshama that's called yechida, and yechida, that's the essence of the neshama. I just want to add another thing, that there's something about Chanukah which we don't find with other things, and that is, does anyone know the term, how it applies to Chanukah, Mahadran min Mahadran? You want to tell us?
Yes. I think there was discussion in the Gemara that, in the full obligation of Hanukkah, you just need to light one candle in each,
Every night.
like one candle for the household, and then if you want to go like higher, like Mahadran, then you, have more than one, everyone light one candle, and then like Mahadran, min Mahadran, like even the higher is having people light and changing the number, and then there's the debate between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai from 8 to 1 or 1 to 8. And then we go by Beis Hillel, that is 1 to 8, and everyone does that. Like everyone does Mahadran or Mahadran.
Right. So that's what I want to talk about. That initially the mitzvah of Chanukah is to light one candle for the whole family. You want to go beyond the letter of the law, do more than you're required, then you do one candle for every family member. And if you want to go beyond the letter of the law, twice beyond the letter of the law, that's called Mahadran, Mina Mahadran, then you actually add a candle every single night. So who did that? Most people lit only one candle. If somebody was a higher spiritual level, they would go beyond that and light a candle for every family member. If someone was even more, exceptional in their spiritual service to Hashem, they would go beyond that. But not everybody did that. Only certain selected individuals did that. In fact, if an ordinary person would do that, it would be like being arrogant. Who do you think you are? Everyone lit one candle. Somehow or other, in case of Chanukah, this became the norm, that everybody lights what used to be, once upon a time, Mahadran, Mina Mahadran, only for the highest level of people to go beyond the halacha and beyond the halacha. This became the norm. So again, one of the ways of explaining it is that when you serve Hashem in a regular way, that's when you do the Torah mitzvahs as you're required. When a person goes beyond the letter of the law, that means there's something deeper inside him, that service to Hashem comes from a deeper place, and the deeper place is not so measured and so calculated. So therefore, he does even more than what is required to do in halacha. Mahadran and a mahadran is when it comes from the deepest place of the neshama, and that's where it brings a person to do Torah mitzvahs on a level that is totally not required to do, but he wants to just do the most that he can. We explained in the previous class, we also had this in the Pirkei Avos class, that doing things beyond halacha doesn't mean that I'm just doing it because I want to make sure that I'm doing everything right. It comes from a place that my love for Hashem is not limited. I have a very strong feeling of love. And what I'm doing is, I'm doing it out of love. When you do something out of love, you don't calculate and you don't measure and you don't, like I said, you don't go to sleep at night and say, so let me find out exactly what a doctor says, how many hours and minutes you're supposed to sleep. And I make sure not to sleep an extra minute, only when I need to. I'm going to eat food only what I need to be alive, and nothing more than that. Things that you enjoy, you do it, you don't measure, you actually want more. Sometimes people have to stop you. Sometimes people have to wake you up because you're sleeping so much. So basically, we don't count. When it comes to something, counting means I don't feel that I love doing this, so I'm just doing whatever I have to do. So doing mitzvahs, mahadran and mahadran, means it's coming from the deepest place of the neshama. So that's the connection to Chanukah, being that Chanukah is about Mesiras Nefesh. Chanukah is number 8. Chanukah is something where the Chashmonayim, they, at that time, were driven by that deepest part of the neshama, the Yechidah. That's why it became the custom that everybody does it this way, because this is a yontiv where the Yechidah is out there more in the open. So I started to explain why tomorrow is called Zeis Chanukah. So I don't know if there's enough time. So let me just explain. I don't have enough copies of it.
Not Chanukah, not today.
Tonight, tomorrow.
Okay.
So I don't know if you're familiar with this. What happens in shul every day on Chanukah? You don't go to shul during the week mostly, but every day they read the Torah. What do they read? They couldn't be reading the parsha of Chanukah in the Torah because Chanukah happened 1,000 years after the Torah was given, more, a little bit more than 1,000 years. So what are we reading on Chanukah? So the answer is, the reason why the Yontiv is called Chanukah, it comes from the word Chanukah Sabayis, which means a rededication of the Beis Hamikdash. It's like the Hebrew word chinuch, to educate children. When you start something, when you begin something, that's called chinuch or Chanukah. So the Beis Hamikdash was not being used for a period of time, and now they got it back and are starting to use it again. So it was called Chanukah Sabayis. And in the Torah, there is such a story, not with what happened with Chanukah, but what happened in the Mishkan. When they were in the desert, for the first time they built the Mishkan, so there was a big celebration for 12 days. And in that celebration, what happened was that every day, only the Nasi, the head of each tribe, brought a korban. And after that, everybody, then everything started to follow the normal, ordinary pattern. But the first 12 days was a celebration, and every day it was done that way. When Shlomo HaMelech, when he built the Beis Hamikdash the first time, they also had a big celebration. It's described in the book of Malachim, in the book of Kings. They had a celebration for 14 days. There must be a reason why here was 12, here was 14. So Chanukah, we also had a celebration. Why? Because we're starting all over again. But here the celebration was for 8 days because of the story with the candles. But what do we read? We read in the Torah about the celebration when they had the Mishkan the first time in the desert. So in the Torah, it says clearly, this Shevet, this tribe brought a korban on the first day. This tribe, and then it says what he brought. Then this tribe brought a korban on the second day, then describes what he brought. The first, the second, the third. And what do we read? Every day we read one of the tribes. What do we read on the 8th day? The 8th day we read all the rest of the tribes. And then in the Chumash it says, and this was the inauguration and the rededication of the Mishkan. And the words in Hebrew are Zeis Chanukah Samizbeach. And that's the part of the Torah which we're going to read tomorrow, is the conclusion, the culmination of all the days of bringing sacrifices. Finally, on the 8th day, everything was completed. So we too, when it comes to the 8th day of Chanukah, our Yontiv is completed on the 8th day. So that's why it's called Zeis Chanukah. But as a result of that, that means that on this day, all the things that happened the first day, the second day, the third day, and finally the 7th day, everything comes to its completion. So that makes the 8th day a very special day. And in fact, it's brought down in many places that it's a time that's conducive for many brachas and many, many good things. So tomorrow people in tzedakah, I mean, there's no different customs that you do, but people in tzedakah, it's a time to receive brachas, to ask Hashem for brachas, because of the fact that it's the 8th day. Okay. Sorry, our Barris couldn't be here because he lost his voice. Hopefully he'll be back by next time he has to give a class. Maybe singing too much on there is a lolo, I don't know. Okay, you're free. Class is over. Yeah. I will teach you class. I will teach you class. Hold on.
Yeah, today's the. Okay, see you.
This is unfortunately the same.